I killed Sparky too.
Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, aka the guy with double vision, and this video we're breaking down episode 8 of Wandavision. The Christmas Carol-esque entry takes a trip through time as we unveil the villainous Vixen's vicious plan and discover there's a lot more going on with Vision. Throughout this video we're going to be breaking it all down, discussing our theories and how the show could be tying into Spider-Man No Way Home. Time codes will be linked below if you want to skip ahead, but I first want to talk about the Darkhold, magic, and that big reveal. Now as for the Darkhold, this mysterious book was shown at the end of the last episode, and I believe that it was part of the Ancient Ones collection which we saw in Doctor Strange. There was one missing from the shelves, and they were surrounded by hexagons, which is of course an aesthetic of how the world is built. The orange glowing energy is typically a sign of wizards, and from the different pigments used throughout the show, it does seem like the colours represent the origins for the spells. Orange is your more typical magic, whereas Wanda's is red because she pulls from chaos energy. Agatha's, however, is purple, and as we learned in Doctor Strange, this is a colour that is typically associated with the Dark Dimension. It also explains her long life, and we have a full breakdown on this in case you want it discussed in more detail. Now as for the Darkhold, this has been used to house several evil spells that can manipulate the fabric of reality. Often referred to as the Book of the Damned, it was crafted by an evil elder god known as Chthon, who encased his most devilish dealings inside of it on indestructible parchment. I'm always worried that I pronounced Chthon wrongly, so let me know if I have. Now I think going forward, this will be a big part of the Marvel Universe, and in the comics it was actually used to create the first vampire. Inadvertently, this led to Blade being born, and I can see it being tied to his upcoming movie in some form or another. Now episode 8 comes with a big reveal, and that is that the Vision we see in the Hex is actually a fake one, and that Wanda never took the real one from the Sword facility. It's something that we started predicting back in episode 5, and I'm glad that for all the theories we've gotten wrong, that this one and Agnes being Agatha at least turned out to be true. My nerd card still hasn't been revoked, thank God. Now against the character's will, Hayward decided to transform the corpse into a weapon, and he was able to do this because as a synthezoid, Vision doesn't carry the same rights as a real person. Hayward was clearly suffering a lot of anxiety over the snap and the devastation that was caused by it, and thus he, like Tony, let his PTSD drive his decision making. Hayward wanted to put somewhat of a suit of armour around the world, and therefore he turned to something tall, stark and handmade in order to do it. I'm guessing that at the end of Infinity War, Cap sold Vision's body on eBay, and that the stare that we saw was him just weighing up whether he could list it as like new or not. Now going forward, I'm predicting that things end up similar to Logan, where we have the two versions facing off against one another, and this will lead to the Hex version of Vision likely dying as he tries to take the Twisted One down. At the moment, it hasn't been said that Bettany has been cast in Doctor Strange 2, and thus it makes sense that he's not amongst the roster if he doesn't make it out of this. I think Marvel have to kind of play the Disney Plus and movie things in the mind state that not everyone, especially not my grandma who loves the MCU but doesn't have the internet, will have seen the shows. Thus, they kinda have to play it where you could potentially watch Endgame, see Wanda depressed at the end of it, and then go into Doctor Strange where they're still being depressed. The fate of her kids is still up in the air, but I do think that they'll survive, and that will then be explained in Doctor Strange 2 as her manifesting them, similar to say something like House of M. Now what's hilarious about this reveal is that in the show, after the Evan Peters recast, Bettany said there was still an actor coming down the line that he wanted to work with since he was a boy. He described them as a genius, and it's a troll that's as good as Tom Holland posting fake Spider-Man 3 titles to trick every single one of us. It was Bettany all along, you son of a bitch, you got me. So yeah, Cataract was likely a pun that makes my double vision one look good, and it was right in front of us the entire time. Whew, I'm so glad I got that theory out there before today. Now as for the episode itself, the Marvel Studio logo pops in as always, but it's wiped out by a purple flash before the red itself changes to the distinctive colour. We cut to Salem, Massachusetts and see Agatha being led into the woods by her coven. This was the time of the Salem witch trials, which started in February of the year beforehand and ended in May of 1693. However, this isn't part of the actual trials, and it's actually the witches who are holding Agatha to account for using magic above her station. On the Queen Witch, Agatha's mother, we can also see the brooch that Agatha has worn throughout the show, and it turns out that this was actually a family heirloom that she took. The scene initially resembles her death in the comics, in which she was put on a pyre and set alight by the Salem 7. However, here it differs slightly, as there's 8, and they use their magic to try and kill her, but it backfires with the dark energy and wipes them all out. Agatha clearly wants to be good, and this very much speaks to her arc in the comics, in which she has gone back and forth between being nice and evil. For the majority of the stories, she's actually been someone who has helped Wanda, so we may get that character development coming down the line. Just don't do anything more to her kids here. Now, Agatha seems like she may have been saved by someone or something due to the fact that this power only manifests at this point. Though I don't want to get into the whole Mephisto thing again, I can see you rolling your eyes. Witches were thought to be the brides of Satan. Ralph is of course her husband, and the name itself comes from the word wolf, which is often a form that the devil himself takes. A cicada appeared in Agnes's house in the last episode, and also in this one. In the comics, the first appearance of Mephisto was in the form of a fly, so potentially that could have been teasing towards it, though the green was very similar to another character. Now, it is possible that the overarching villain is Nightmare, who is someone else I think they could easily give Mephisto's powers to without causing any controversy. This would also set up the dream aesthetic of the Hex and lead into Doctor Strange 2, which he's theorized to be a villain for. Or she, it might be a woman, we're not sexist here, yeah? Now, a nightmare is of course what the Hex has turned into as well, and it is possible that we'll get several overarching villains in the Disney Plus shows. I don't want to keep going on about why Mephisto might not be in it because of China, but there are other reasons outside of it that Disney might decide to omit him. I was saying in another video that they could just put Mephisto in it and change the Chinese subtitles to say Nightmare, but not everyone YOLOs as hard as I do, so we don't know. Nightmare and dreams are mentioned when Wanda is trapped under the bed, and I can imagine a post-credit scene in the finale that does give us a tease towards this. Now, an interesting thing is that Agatha's mother manifests a sort of crown when casting her magic, and it is possible that Wanda will create a red one at some point to get her classic look. We jump back to Wanda in Agatha's basement, and she's unable to enter her thoughts because of their differences in powers and abilities. Now, I did point out earlier in the week that there were devil heads on the pillars in the basement, and this is likely the figure that she as a witch worships. There's also a ram's head, which is a satanic symbol. I'm going to stop myself before I go back down that path. Now, Agatha also brings up runes and how only the person who sets them is able to cast a spell inside of them. I actually think that this will be the key to defeating her, and that next time they might be set up around the town in order to take her down. It also means that there is a way to confine her, and it sets up a big weakness for the characters across the board when we come to deal with them in the future. Now, we learn that Pietro, or rather Pietro, was brought across and given the role of her brother because she was so crippled by her grief that she wouldn't ask any questions. There are two ways that you can take this, in that either he's just a nobody due to the continent comment by Agatha, or he's somehow been pulled through the multiverse. I think due to his abilities that it might be the latter, but it's looking like the reveal might just be one big disappointment. I'm kind of bummed out at the moment if he is just someone from the town, as that might mean no X-Men, and who knows, he actually might be the person under witness protection. I did go through the town scene towards the end and try and fish him out, but he wasn't there, so I'm still holding out hope. Now, Agatha brings up Westview and all of the complex magics that Wanda is dealing with in the realm. Agatha is obsessed over this, as the best she can do is mind control and transmutation on a small scale, but Wanda is of course running this across the entire town. She wants to know how she did it, and hey, I feel the same. Just give us the answers. Now, unable to draw the truth out, Agatha takes a dive into her mind, and can I just say I absolutely loved Catherine Hahn in these scenes, as she's phenomenal at not only hamming it up, but also adding the sinister side to the character. Wanda has to go along with her because she has her kids stashed away in her bewitched basement, and this is actually a nod to how the house that Agatha lives in is the one from Bewitched. Agatha takes the character on a trip throughout her life. I think it's now fully established that witches can do this. In Thor Ragnarok, Loki said he can't see into the future because he's not a witch, and later in Endgame, Frigga was able to tell that Thor was a different person because she said she was raised by witches, and because he looked like a completely different person. Now, we can gather from this that witches have the ability to see backwards and forwards, and who knows, it may even become a part of Wanda's skill set at some point. Here she sees her childhood with Pietro, and I don't know if it's just me, but I think this might have been a Tangled reference. Now moving on, there's also a red TV that has been used throughout the promotional material. We are introduced to Wanda and Pietro's parents, which debunks the idea that they were the pair in the commercials. Her dad sells DVD box sets of sitcoms, most of which have appeared as aesthetics through the show. There's Malcolm in the Middle, Bewitched, I Love Lucy, The Addams Family, Who's the Boss, and I Dream of Jeannie. The family used to hold TV night, and this is also how the children learned to speak English. Wanda also used these as a way to escape from reality, and this is why they were brought across to the aesthetic of the show, as she was literally escaping from reality. Pietro said she was suppressing a lot of trauma, and it's an awesome scene watching this play out. She picks her favourite, The Dick Van Dyke Show, which was the first sitcom that the series centered upon. It says on Google that the episode title of Season 2, Episode 21 is My Husband is a Check Grabber, but we see in the entry that it's called It May Look Like a Walnut. You better not be lying to me, Marvel, you know I like these Easter eggs. Now the aesthetic is absolutely spot on, including the bedroom and kitchen scenes, which have of course appeared throughout the season. The piece is interrupted though when the explosion goes off that we know from Wanda's past killed both her parents. Amongst the rubble she and her brother wait as stock weaponry is dropped on the location, and when one doesn't go off they spend 2 days looking at the logo. The red flashing light on it of course appeared in the first commercial, and it's clear that this trauma has vastly shaped her life. Wanda is pulled out by Agatha, and we discover that, as a child, she used a probability hex. Now in the comics, Wanda actually uses hex magic, and she has based powers around probability, which are, well, to put it simply, luck. Because Wanda is able to alter the probability of events, she can swing them in her favour, and this is how she stopped the bomb from going off. In the comics, Wanda was actually given these powers as a child by Chthon, but whether that carries across, we don't know yet. However, Agatha doesn't discover what allowed her magic to grow beyond this, and thus they enter the Hydra labs, which is where she was experimented on along with her brother. Here we see Loki's scepter, which of course housed the Mind Stone. Now we did theorize that this scene was actually Wanda creating the Mind Stone for Vision's head, but we got it wrong, like everyone who cancelled Disney Plus and is missing out on this. What do you mean you just pirate it? Anyway, Wanda actually removes the housing unit from the scepter itself and sees the traditional Scarlet Witch coming towards her. This is likely Wanda seeing the future, like witches can, and at the end of the episode she gets her made up name, and this is very much foreshadowing that. Now coming into contact with the Infinity Stones somewhat enhanced her abilities, and it does explain how she became vastly more powerful. Wanda steps back into the room she was held during the events of Civil War, and we also see how the sitcoms are tied to her life as she watched them more than I've watched the MCU. Vision walks through the wall, as we know he doesn't really have a thing for doors, and the pair sit on the bed and watch Malcolm in the Middle. Vision doesn't get the slapstick behind it because he's unable to understand certain subtleties, however he does genuinely want to bring her comfort after the death of her brother. Wanda clearly doesn't want to talk about it, much in the same way that she shut down other conversations that have almost uncovered the truth. Vision actually gives her a look at true humanity and the highs and lows of it. I think this trip really makes her appreciate the truth and how grief is often just love persevering. Agatha takes the pair away and tries to crack her, and from here we journey to the sword facility. We can see a news report about families being reunited, and similar to Monica, the pair were robbed of being with their loved ones when they were returned. I actually think that Maria will manifest in some form or another to tempt Monica and the Hex, as we now learn a lot about how the entire thing operates. Wanda just wants closure and to bury Vision, but she's been robbed of this. Now due to the way that the Vision is viewed, he's had a vastly different death in comparison to Tony Stark. Throughout Far From Home, we watched as Peter Parker encountered several tributes to him, playing pretty much 24/7. Both gave their lives, but only one is seen as a death that people should mourn, and this has clearly tormented Wanda. There's no memorials for him because it's seen almost like changing your iPhone, but Wanda deeply loved the character, and this is obviously making her grief even worse as she has no one that understands her plight. Now because Vision isn't seen as a person, it also means that his will is ignored, and therefore Hayward can experiment on him. Wanda is almost buzzed through initially, but she just blasts her way through the doors, and this juxtaposes Monica's entry as she had to wait to be given clearance by Hayward. Wanda goes to him, and he introduces himself as director instead of acting director, likely changing it for Monica because he doesn't want her to see him as a threat. He allows her to see the body, and it's almost like a reverse Frankenstein's monster scene where he's being torn apart. Hayward just sees him as a weapon, and saying terms like "we're bringing him back online" instead of trying to bring him back to life, it just shows his mentality. Hayward says he isn't yours, and she flies down and tries to reactivate him, but she says she can't feel him. This of course is a phrase that the pair used with one another to exemplify their love, and it missing here shows how much Wanda has lost. I'm not crying, you're crying. Now due to this, instead of taking the body, she leaves it as we predicted. Now I did get a lot of people asking why I thought that Wanda didn't take it when I came up with that theory, and the simple answer is because we never saw her leave with the body. Often in screenwriting, if you don't see something, you shouldn't take it as a given, and though Hayward did seem like he was trying to take Vision back, I think the audience assumed a lot when it came down to it. If you cast your mind back to episode 4, you will remember that Hayward actually sent Monica out on a missing persons mission, and it was only by accident that Wanda was discovered. Hayward had absolutely no plans about tracking him down before this, and thus I think that he wasn't looking for Vision because he still had him. Going forward, you might remember that from the start of Far From Home, there's actually a bit in memoriam to him, and this movie is actually set after the events of Wandavision. So it looks like things changed in terms of how he was perceived, and it's like that he was getting in memoriam because he dies at the end of the show. Spoiler alert. Now in her scarlet car, Wanda finds the deeds to a house in Westview and she drives out there. Though it does seem like Agatha placed this there, we don't know for definite if it was her, and I'm not sure exactly how she would have known that Wanda could have done all this. This opens up the possibility for more people behind the show, and let me know below if you have any other theories. Now along the way, I'm probably talking out my arse again. Now along the way she sees Herb and some of the notable characters that I call the Trap Squad. I think the mailman being a delivery guy here does highlight that he isn't Mephisto, and it looks like the real Mephisto was the friends we made along the way. Now the town is far from its pristine self, and she very much views it as a place that she can potentially improve. The snap obviously devastated the landscape of the world, and it doesn't seem like they've managed to fully get back on their feet. Now the deed shows a place to grow old in, and it also has words on it like "to have and to hold." This grant was given by someone called Kate Weddle, which is actually one letter short of my wife's real name, and I've been telling you for months now, yeah, it's all connected. Now in the despair she builds the hex without the help of Agatha and forms the house around her in the destroyed lot. Wanda is almost completely godlike in the creation of this reality, and shouts to Jake Word for pointing out that, like God, after creating the world, she rested on the seventh episode. Wanda then creates Vision, and we see the scene from the trailer in which he welcomed her, which we predicted would be the formation of the Hex happening in this entry. Vision says welcome home, and the pair sit down on the sofa whilst he triggers the TV in a moment that's similar to the ending of the first episode. Cut to the set lights and we go behind the scenes to see Agatha clapping, realizing that Wanda really is a myth, capable of spontaneous creation, a nexus being that can control reality from its chaos magic. She holds the children hostage, and then we cut to credits. I think going ahead that it will be revealed that Pietro was actually not working for Agatha, and that he was simply snooping around too, and that Monica, Vision and he will help the witch to take down Agatha. I'm still a bit torn on whether it's really Quicksilver or not, and I kinda hope it is, but it's also seeming less and less likely. Now jump to the mid-credits scene and we see Hayward activating his secret weapon, the White Vision. By drawing from Wanda's abilities on the drone, they've managed to power up the corpse, and it's chilling seeing him activated, and I absolutely love this end credits scene. Now White Vision is actually a version of the character that has appeared in the comics throughout the decades. After his death in Infinity War, it was thought that he might take this form, and in a way, I guess that he did. Well, he did, because the Hex one is the Hex one and the Infinity War is the... Never mind, it's getting confusing. Now, in the source material, White Vision is the character completely removed of his personality and opposite to the man that Wanda fell in love with. In the source material, it was a while before things went back to normal, but it's still awesome seeing this pan out here. Anyway, I love how this ties back to the comics, and as mentioned at the start of the video, I think it will lead to a face-off that means the Hex Vision will have to destroy himself in order to wipe out the other one. This will finally rid the world of this dangerous weapon, and it could potentially give Wanda the closure she needs, though I can imagine it being completely devastating. I think the next episode will start with them defeating Agatha before moving on to this, and as the magic gets worse, then Doctor Strange will be called in. Now before we get into the news on Loki, Spider-Man 3 and our general thoughts on the show, I'd massively appreciate the thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the finale. Also, huge thank you for getting my videos trending 6 weeks in a row now. I'm not really expecting it with this one, but I just want to say thank you so much for making me feel a bit important, I guess. Now, this was another spellbinding episode, and I think that this show is slowly starting to deliver a lot of satisfying answers. In the case of Westworld Season 3, many of us had thoughts and theories on where things were going, and this led to certain expectations being made. I think Westworld let us down, whereas the reveals in this season, even if they did deviate from what was expected, still worked really well. I've had so much fun guessing things over the past 7 weeks, and to see some of them come true whilst others don't means that I get the ego boost from getting stuff right, whilst also the surprise of seeing where things go. It's the perfect balance for me, and I'm sure that many of you feel the same, especially if you're someone who spends most of their time throughout the week obsessing over things like the Yo Gabba Gabba bit. It just feels like this entire show has been similar to a comic book story arc, in that we get different issues every single week and it all builds towards this big overarching story. Overall, this was another great episode, and I can't wait to see what's around the corner for the finale. Now, Wandavision is sadly coming to an end soon, and there will be a Friday of blank, endless emptiness before we get Falcon and the Winter Soldier releasing the following week. It's also just been announced that after the show finishes, we will get Star Wars The Bad Batch in May, and once that airs, we'll get Loki on June the 11th. I believe that's going to be a 9-episode run too, so plenty of stuff to look forward to, and if What If is still holding its spot in August, we have so many things coming down the line. Now, an interesting aspect is that Wandavision will be tying in directly with Spider-Man No Way Home. This was confirmed long ago by the mastermind behind it all, but the title reveal also brought a lot with it. In the announcement, we watched Tom Holland, Zendaya and Jacob Batalon discussing it before we got its full name. There were a couple of cool details in the lead up to this, including the t-shirt that had the equation on it that Peter Parker worked out in Homecoming. On the board itself, there were also several hexagons, and the logo itself glitched in a similar TV effect that we've seen throughout WandaVision. We also know that several characters from the multiverse are coming across, such as Alfred Molina and of course Jamie Foxx. Now, J. Jonah Jameson is already here, and it may be revealed that due to Far From Home happening after WandaVision, that this is how he joined the universe. Tinfoil hat mode on that one, but just something I'm thinking. Now, hexagons have of course been set up in WandaVision and the hex itself. As it's linking in, I'm guessing that WandaVision might see the multiverse really open up, though it kinda already has through the use of Quicksilver. Now, there's also Tesseracts on the board too, and as we know from the MCU, this can be used to travel from one place to another. Potentially, a Tesseract could also be used to go from one place to another, not only across time and space, but also the multiverse itself. It's also worth pointing out that cubes in general can be made from hexagons, and therefore we have this idea of a Tesseract basically being a 3-dimensional hexagon. There's also a benzene symbol on there, and Uncle Ben has been dead for a long time. I'm sorry, that was so bad. Anyway, there's a lot going on here. I love the little comments on stuff like Stay Home and Homeworlds, which is what I thought the movie would be, but I guess that's too boring. And I must be a boring person because I'm still chuckling to myself a bit over that terrible Uncle Ben joke. Now, No Way Home also makes me think that the movie might end up with him crossing over into the Sonyverse and ending up there whilst he helps out Venom and Morbius. I don't know exactly what's happening though, which is why I want to hear your thoughts and theories, and of course everything you think is going to be happening in the next episode. We have so much to unpack, and I'm guessing there's going to be a ton of more things dropping before the finale next Friday. I just wanted to be here, but until then, I'll read what you have to say, so make sure you leave a good comment. What do you mean heavy spoilers as an idiot? That's not what I meant. As a thank you for interacting with the video, you'll be entered into a prize draw on the 28th of February, in which we're giving away 3 copies of the Marvel Phase 3 4K box set to our subscribers. All you have to do to be in with a chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the episode. The winners of last month's competition are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of all the theories, how the show connects to Doctor Strange, the one about Vision, and the Yo Gabba Gabba commercial. We've gone over the entire thing and pointed out some really cool details, so it's definitely worth checking out if you want to know more. With that out of the way, thank you for sitting through the video. I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.